Hello, everyone. My name is Chia-Chuan. I'm a PhD student from the University of Texas at Austin. Today, I'm going to present our findings in a study that focused on acute exercise and executive function by utilizing a virtual reality environment. Before we talk about the VR instrument, I'd like to give you some background on the effects of exercise. According to a report from the CDC in the US, most of the states contained 15% of physically inactive adults, which means they work out for less than 3 days per week and didn't have enough exercise for each occasion. In some of the states, the prevalence of physical inactivity is even higher than 50%. So why does physical inactivity matter? Previous studies have shown that insufficient physical inactivity can cause poor physiological health, such as diabetes and cancer, which might be due to the decreased immune system and metabolism. Also, the harmful effects of physical inactivity on psychological aspects are also available. For example, a lower amount of exercise in daily life was linked to declined cognitive performance, including but not limited to inhibitory control and working memory, indicating the broadly detrimental effects of physical inactivity on well-being. On the other hand, a number of studies have demonstrated that a single bout of exercise is effective for enhancing cognitive function across the lifespan and for varied populations. For instance, participating in moderate acute exercise can induce better conflict information processing, which was reflected by the decreased stroke interference in reaction time. Other components of executive function include motor inhibition among violent offenders and error monitoring in ADHD children, were all improved by acute exercise in the literature. Although the theory for the relationship between acute exercise and cognition is still developing, there are some existing findings that provide the mechanism of enhanced cognitive performance by cognitive neuroscience approaches. For the improvement associated with executive function, hemodynamic studies found increased oxygenated hemoglobin in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which coincides with the neuroelectric findings that acute exercise can induce larger N2 and P3 amplitudes in the frontal parietal regions. And for the increases in memory performance, the changes in the BDNF and hippocampus structures offer the potential explanation for how the acute exercise facilitates the process of encoding and decoding information. Therefore, one goal of this study was to investigate how acute exercise influences cognitive performance. In addition to the benefits of acute exercise, a larger number of studies also indicated that chronic exercise promotes brain health. Following a long-term exercise intervention for multiple months or multiple years, the volume of gray and white matter regions could be increased. For instance, the anterior cingulate cortex and supplementary motor area, which are vital for cognitive control and affective regulation. Furthermore, the increased BDNF was also linked to chronic exercise, which uncovers the underlying mechanisms of memory performance by long-term exercise. Although the microstructural evidence is scarce, one recent research found that after a 12-week exercise intervention, participants showed larger changes in myelin density in the dorsal middle precentral gyrus and ventral motor cortex compared with the control group, while the change in myelin density was also related to the improvements in aerobic fitness measure. So in summary, the exercise and cognition literature suggested that both acute and chronic exercise experience are beneficial for behavioral performance and brain functioning by different mechanisms. So in addition to the effects of acute exercise, we also examined whether people who regularly engaged in physical training would also demonstrate better cognitive performance. In light of this rationale, military personnel and healthy matched adults were recruited in this study because the military experience contains extensive physical training in daily routine, which is assumed to be associated with superior cognitive ability. And among the studies that I just mentioned, the researchers have used a variety of tools to conduct acute exercise interventions, such as treadmill, ergometer, or running in a playground. However, the transferability of these findings may be limited to laboratory settings due to the lack of sense of the real-world environment. So it is necessary to develop an ecologically valid protocol for acute exercise intervention. My colleagues published an article last year that described an application of a VR-based treadmill on measuring executive function. So the current research followed their approach and added the investigation of the effect of acute exercise in a novel laboratory setting. But what if I told you that we can do more for facilitating cognitive function? So actually, studies demonstrated that the combination of exercise and cognitive training is much more powerful than using either exercise or a cognitive activity alone. So this study published by my colleagues, they used the VR protocol that we developed and found that participants performed better VR-based go-no-go task when they were walking compared with the standing condition. However, the discriminability of this VR protocol for individuals with varied cognitive capacities is unclear. So in the current study, we investigated not only the effects of acute exercise using a VR environment, but also determined the discriminatory ability of this approach to differentiate who is theoretically higher in cognitive performance. Therefore, this study aimed to determine the feasibility of an immersive VR dual task protocol to differentiate the executive function performance between military personnel and civilians. And second, we investigated the influences of varied workloads of dual task on executive function. The dual task here refers to the combination of physical activity plus cognitive stimuli. So we compare participants' performance before and after the VR protocol. This study recruited 14 civilians and 5 military personnel who were healthy adults and matched age and BMI between groups. A VR-based go-no-go task was deployed, which will be shown in the next slide. For comparing executive function, we used flanker and delay match to sample tasks before and after the VR protocol. So after measuring the preferred walking speed, which was used in a dual task, participants conducted the pretesting for flanker and delay match to sample tasks. Then the VR-based protocol was administered and followed by the second measure of the flanker and delay match to sample tasks. Here, this is the VR treadmill go-no-go task that we used. So basically, there are multiple projectors used to shape the natural trail environment. At the same time, several sensors on the roof are used to capture the motion of participants during the task to calculate the accuracy and RT in this go-no-go task. In this task, we put 3 dual task workloads, including sitting, standing, and walking. To increase the task complexity, we introduced 2 types of stimulus congruence. So participants were instructed to hit the green dot but avoid the red dot on the screen in the congruent condition. In contrast, they were told to respond to the red dots but not green objects in the incongruent condition. There were 120 trials for each condition and 3 minutes for each condition. So as you can see, the table on the right-hand side, we followed the order from condition 1 to condition 6. Each one has a different combination of dual task complexity. To induce the sense of incongruent stimuli, the congruent condition would occur prior to the incongruent condition. Here is a short video of the VR task. So to prevent injury, participants were equipped with a harness on their back. So as you can see here in the video, we have a rack behind the participant. So this environment could also be used for apnea study. Now let's look at what we got. So here is the behavioral performance for the VR treadmill go-no-go task. Now we can look at the accuracy. So first, the military group had a larger accuracy than the civilians, which showed the discriminatory ability of this VR protocol. Second, for the RT in the VR-based task, an interaction between dual task workloads and congruence was observed. We found that the reaction time was longer in the incongruent condition than the congruent condition. Also, in a congruent condition, sitting produced the longest RT, but there was no difference between standing and walking. While in the incongruent condition, the walking condition induced the shortest RT, but there is no discrepancy between sitting and standing. This data suggested that the manipulation of congruence on the VR system could effectively interfere with behavioral reaction time. Now, look at the effects of this VR-based protocol on executive function. We compared the cognitive assessments before and after the VR protocol. For the delayed match to sample task, which is widely used for estimating working memory, we were not able to see any significant changes in the accuracy and RT. However, the VR-based protocol has had influences on the flanker task performance. Here we displayed an interaction between congruence and time point, in addition to the main effect of flanker interference on both accuracy and RT. The post-hoc analysis revealed that the flanker interference on accuracy was only available before but not after the VR-based protocol, suggesting that this single bout of light physical activity might facilitate the complete information processing, so that participants' accuracy was not affected by the flankers after the VR protocol. This study showed that the application of a VR environment to estimate cognitive performance is feasible. Firstly, we recruited military individuals because of their large experiences in physical training, which may result in better cognitive function and fitness level. Indeed, we saw that the military group had higher accuracy in the VR-based go-no-go task. Second, similar to previous cognitive control studies, for example, those used flanker, Stroop, and Simon paradigms, the RT in the VR go-no-go task was impacted by the incongruent stimuli. Furthermore, our VR protocol contained both short physical activity and cognitive stimuli. By this approach, although we didn't see any changes in working memory performance, the influence on the flanker task performance was available. Specifically, the interference of the flankers was only observed before but not after the VR protocol. Thus, the dual task conditions may have a benefit on conflict information processing. For future directions, since underlying neural processing mechanisms could be helpful for understanding how this VR protocol affects behavioral performance. We suggested future studies to combine neural image methods with this VR intervention, for example, FNIRS. Finally, because the MOTAC system that we used for developing the VR protocol is flexible with modification, so researchers can create what scenarios that they want. Future studies may want to change the paradigm so that it can accommodate clinical populations. For instance, one may change treadmill speed for stroke patients or add cognitive emotional training components in the VR-based go-no-go task for individuals with mental disorders. Thank you so much for your interest and attention. I'd also like to thank all the members in our lab. This work cannot be done without your efforts. I would be happy if you have any questions or comments.